it doesn't work. And I hope that whenever we get a conservative government, which I hope will be sooner rather than later, that they overhaul the system. The press gallery has to go, and I think we have to go towards an objective criteria of accreditation.
So I'm with Elie Quentin-Nantel. You know him, former journalist for True North. Now he is independent. He has his own YouTube channel. But today at the Canada Strong and Free Network Conference.
Former Conservative Party leader Erin O'Toole, he gave an interview to Global News where he said that he basically railed against influencers, and he said that we're a liability to the Conservative Party. So I want to ask you guys, are influencers a liability to the Conservative Party, the Conservative movement? Or does in fact the opposite is true? Maybe we actually need more influencers to spread conservatism across Canada.
I think that if we as a nation start condemning individuals for using their cell phones or camera equipment and talking about politics, we have a way bigger problem that we should be discussing as a nation.
You led a panel about the future of media and the impact of censorship for YouTuber, influencer. Can you talk a little bit about the consequences that those people who are doing online content are facing with all the new bill that the Liberal government is pushing?
Well, I'm glad you asked that. So when I decided to go on my own, I wanted to start a news organization. But the problem is if you start a news organization in Canada today, you are censored on Facebook and Instagram because of Bill C-18, which is the worst piece of legislation the government has ever passed. The idea and the way the Liberals are getting around that is they're just giving more subsidies to their favorite media that they like. But I don't want to get subsidized by the government. In fact, in independent media, as you guys know very well at Rebel News, we take $0 proudly from the government, so that's not a solution for us. So I had to start a personal brand. Now I've been very lucky. My personal brand has done very well. We grew by 3,350% in just a couple of months. We have over 10,000 subscribers now. But it's annoying that as a businessman, I cannot start a business in a field where there's lots of demand for that sort of business because of the government.
When you hear the term influencer, typically it's a negative connotation. Let's get honest, like the term influencer is something that's been used to, it's been saturated. And it started like back in the early 2010s-ish, that's when influencing started becoming more of a thing through Instagram and some of these platforms. So naturally, I do find it kind of hilarious you're now taking that term and throwing it into the political sphere because, as Jasmine said, you decide to flip the camera on yourself and start talking politics. You're influencing people. So you're an influencer. Yeah, I guess by the definition, sure. But let's be honest, politics is politics. We use terms to denigrate specific people in order to devalue what they're saying.
You actually also talk about the program that the Liberals have launched. I think it was last year, to subsidize by Google some of news outlets. And it was in a way to create more news outlets, more independent small news outlets. And what we realized that we are losing some outlets. Yes. We have less diversity now. Is that something that you saw like as an impact that it doesn't work what they actually created?
Well, it doesn't work. And I'll just say one thing, like when I got into independent media, it was a growing sector. Like there was all these new startups, there was so much demand, and out of nowhere that just changed. And we're very thankful that there's been people who've been around long enough to sustain the damage. Rebel News, for example, the coverage has remained the same. Some of these other outlets too. But the newer outlets that weren't started in 2015, that were started like maybe around a convoy, well, they had only been around for a year. That is basically a sentence to death if you cannot be on Facebook and Instagram anymore. Mm-hmm. So I think it's done much more harm than good. You can start new businesses. It's much harder. I mean, you can, but again, you're going to be censored on two of the biggest platforms. And it creates more dependency between legacy media and government, which is not good for press freedom.
Mais moi, je me demandais s'il allait avoir un accord où les médias canadiens pouvaient revenir sur Facebook et Instagram. Mais vous dites que ce n'est pas nécessairement dans les cartons pour l'instant.
Ah, c'est possible. Hein?
C'est possible.
Oui, absolument.
OK.
Oui, on fait une review sur cela.
So recently, Mark Carney, during an interview with Alex Blick, he actually said that he's not close to the idea to reopen access to news outlets and Meta. Do you believe him when he's saying that?
Well, I believe results. So if he's able to change that, great. I've been speaking to some business leaders, and I've been begging them, please, as you lobby the U.S. government, get them to make this a concession of USMCA. These bills, Bill C-11, C-18, they have to go. They're killing independent media with these bills. I think that's the intention. We have to remember that the people drafting the policies, they're politicos. Of course, they take into consideration the impacts of their bills, including the fact that their bill may kill off independent media. There's a net positive for them in that. If there aren't voices that are critical, conservative, that hold the Liberals to account, they're better off. They can get away with more. Now, I don't think that's the number one reason why. I think they're buying into the lies that legacy media is dying just because people are mean or something, and they want to save that industry. But definitely, it's something that they're okay with. They're okay with the consequence, and that's very disturbing. When I was flirting with going independent, this was something that came up with some of the people I was talking to about this. Well, will people trust you because now you won't be under a code of ethics? And apparently the codes of ethics are like the holy grail of journalism. And I mean, they're important, don't get me wrong. I took a course on that when I was in university as an elective. But, you know, personally, as Kelsey said, like my business is built on 3 pillars. One of them is fact-based. So when I do an investigation, when I do a video, I go through 2 to 3 rounds of fact-checking. I fact-check myself manually, and I fact-check with AI just in case I've missed something. Everything I put out is verified with almost anxiety-level certainty.
Do you think it's because they want to suppress small independent news outlets, or do you think it's because they try to get control over the narrative?
So I think the main goal of C-11, C-18 is that they want to, quote-unquote, promote Canadian content because they've been lobbied to do so. I think that that is the initial goals. They want to fund legacy media. They want to keep that apparatus going. The consequence of these legislation has been that it's hurt independent media, and what I'm saying is the Liberals are okay with this being a consequence. It's a net positive for them this to be a consequence, because at the end of the day, the CBC will still be there. Some of these other outlets will still be there, and these outlets cover the Liberals positively. So I'm not coming up with this conspiracy theory that all these bills were introduced just to shut down independent media. No, I do think it's because they were lobbied by these media groups to save a dying industry.
Organizations like yours that continue to spread misinformation and disinformation on the science around vaccines, around how we're going to actually get through this pandemic and be there for each other and keep our kids safe, is part of why we're seeing such unfortunate anger and lack of understanding of basic science. And quite frankly, I won't call it a media organization, your group of individuals need to take accountability for some of the polarization that we're seeing in this country. And I think Canadians are cluing into the fact that there is a really important decision we take about the kind of country we want to see. And I salute all extraordinary, hardworking journalists that put science and facts at the heart of what they do and ask me tough questions every day, but make sure that they are educating and informing Canadians from a broad range of perspectives, which is the last thing that you guys do.
But a consequence of these bills has been that it's killed, or not killed, but it's hurt independent media, and the Liberals are okay with that, because the Liberals don't like independent media, and I can say that objectively. They had reporters arrested, they banned us from their press events. Justin Trudeau had a meltdown at one of the leaders' debates over an independent media outlet he doesn't like, which happens to be the one I'm speaking to. So we know they don't like independent media, so they're okay with the consequences that we're seeing, such as going on Instagram, you can't even access any independent news site. You also want to talk about ethics. I mean, the amount of times I've seen CBC pieces, especially on like a controversial issue like the trans issue, they feature 6 voices all on one side, no one on the other side. That's not ethical journalism, I'm sorry. Josh, your turn now. So as a podcaster, what are the responsibilities you feel like you have to your audience, given that you don't have a
code of ethics in your contract.
Yeah, well, apparently there's the code of ethics doesn't including your opening your comment sections on your videos, apparently.
And also the news body, the press gallery,
Right.
that we have at the provincial level, but also at the Ottawa, they are blocking journalists
Of
to
course.
attend the parliament, and this is an issue.
It is. So I don't think there should be a press gallery. It should be done more objectively. It's shown to be a disaster. What you have is you have a club of people, and what's happening is there's an industry change. That industry is dying off, but that industry still controls access. Okay? It's almost like if the payphone industry was controlling the cell phone industry and who had access to cell towers, basically. It doesn't work. And I hope that whenever we get a conservative government, which I hope will be sooner rather than later, that they overhaul the system. The press gallery has to go, and I think we have to go towards an objective criteria of accreditation. If you look at the White House in the U.S., like they accredit independent media. There's a seat for independent media in the press briefing room. They're allowed to go on the official trips. We need something like that because we cannot just have a couple of elite journalists in Ottawa controlling access.
Mm-hmm. And do you think by suppressing more and more small independent news outlets, they are not creating a Streisand effect?
That's a good question. I think that the only thing legacy media could do to slow down the growth of independent media is to get back to appropriate reporting. So by that I mean not quoting 6 so-called experts who all have the same point of view on a story. I'm talking about diverse, putting actual conservatives on shows like Power and Politics instead of putting just lobbyists on, right? If they actually want to regain their position of dominance, they have to do the steps that are needed to regain that trust. And by just doubling down on what has made them unpopular in the first place, which some on the left are calling for them to do, you're only digging your grave further.
I hope you enjoy our coverage, and if you want to support us, there is one way to do it. It's at rebelfieldreports.com. On this website, you can donate what you can to support your favorite independent media. And as well, don't forget to subscribe and let a comment in the comment section to let us know your thoughts. Thanks for watching.